So this is the 14th annual special retreat held at Paṇḍitā Sayadaw Forest Center. And those yogis who have come here at this time to practice have practiced as much as they could, and they have gained knowledge to the extent of their practice. The name of this center, Sayadaw, it means 10-mile hill. Okay? And this place is 10 miles from Bago, and in this location, 10 miles from Bago, there's a hill. So it is called Sayadaw, 10-mile hill. But Sayadaw would like to change the name to Sayadaw, which means the hill where people are saved from the fire. So it sounds the same as the name in Burmese, but it has a very different meaning. So this is a place where, according to the teachings of the Buddha, as explained by the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, and with the guidance of the individual meditation teachers, the yogis can put out the fires of the kilesas with the trainings, the 3 trainings. And to the extent that they have applied themselves to the 3 trainings, they have gained peace. So the practice of sila, samadhi, and panya is for saving oneself from the fires. And so Sayadaw wants to call this place, instead of 10-mile hill, he wants to call it the hill where people are saved from the fire. So if we think about what the yogis have been doing, the task that is here, the foreign yogis who have come, to the extent that they have practiced, they've put out fires. They've put out the fires of the kilesas to the extent of their practice, and they've gained a refuge. So knowing the method of practice, applying it, that practice pulls us up out of a hot, burning life. And therefore, Sayadaw would like to call this place Sayadaw, which is the hill where people are saved from the fire. In the Buddha's time, this type of place was called asama, and it means hermitage. But this word asama has a hidden meaning. The 3 fires of the kilesas of raga, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion, are the cause of all suffering. If one doesn't want suffering, one has to search for a method to eliminate its cause. Or one may hear about it from a teacher. So those who don't want suffering and who cherish peace, they will study the method for putting out the fire of the kilesas and then apply that method. So there's the method of sila for putting out the gross fires of transgressional acts. And there's the method of samadhi for suppressing the obsessive defilements. And then there's the training of panya, wisdom, for uprooting the seeds of kilesas permanently. So the Buddha gave us these 3 trainings. And this is what we put into practice here. The training of sila, samadhi, and panya are all involved in our daily practice here. So this is a place for putting out fires. We come here and take on the role of a yogi, or we take on the robes of a monk. So taking on the appearance of a yogi or a monk or a nun without practicing is being a yogi, a monk, or a nun in name only. One has to take on the practice. Outside of the time in which one is asleep, one has to apply one's mindfulness in order to prevent the kilesas from arising, and if they arise, to put them out immediately. In the world, fire is very important. We have to prepare in order to prevent fire from breaking out. And if it breaks out, we have to be equipped to put it out. So a fire is very dangerous, and it can burn up. It can burn up anything in its way. So we need to have, not only in our home, we need to have fire extinguishers and so on, in case the fire breaks out in our house. And we also have to have a fire department in our town or village, so we need to have these two types of protection. We have to have our individual protection at home, and we also have to have a fire department that we can call when things get out of hand. So here we come to a place for putting out fires of kilesas, and we make effort in the practice according to the instructions, and to the extent that we've applied oneself, to the extent that we have applied ourselves to the practice, we've gained peace. Some yogis will go back, some have already left, and some will continue their practice. But what is important for everyone is to become a firefighter. One needs to be able to put out the fires using the practice. So, just as we need to take measures to protect against external fires, we also need to deal with the internal fires that can arise within us. Most people of the world are being burned by the fires of the kilesas and suffer a lot because of this. And their lives become very degraded because of this. But most people don't know, so they are happy playing with fire. They play with the fire of greed, of raga, of lust. They're happy with pleasures. And people also play with the fire of hatred, one-on-one or between groups or one country against another. There's many, many people who are happy with this fire of hatred, and they act out on it. When one does this, other people are harmed, and one suffers also. But people are happy with fighting. If one continues to play with fire, one won't have a chance to make this burning life peaceful. Sayadaw hopes that all the yogis will be able to reach the stage of making their life peaceful. So, if one doesn't understand the benefit of putting out the fires that occur in our lives, the fires within, or if one understands the benefits but doesn't know a method for putting them out, or if one knows the method but doesn't apply it in time, then one will one will continue to suffer the fires of the kilesas, and one's life will be degraded. So knowing the method for putting out the fires, one should practice it. One should practice at least to the stage of eliminating the potential for rebirth in the lower realms in one's following lifetimes. That means that one should practice to reach at least the first stage of enlightenment. If one does so, if one reaches that stage, then one has gained a guarantee that one won't suffer rebirth in lower realms in the future. But one still will have future lifetimes for a while. If one is not satisfied, having reached Sotapati Naga, if one is not satisfied with the potential of still having more lifetimes ahead, then one should continue one's practice. So although people have raised up their life, one still must relate with all kinds of people and in all kinds of situations. And when one meets up with an enticing object, lova can still arise. And when one meets up with an object that one dislikes, anger can still arise, even though one has improved one's life. And also, there are situations where one will be confused, unable to decide, will not see clearly. So one needs to establish sati so as not to transgress. This is very important. So Sayadaw hopes that all the yogis will be able to establish sati in their lives so that they will be able to control their actions and their mind. So people who like the arts, there may be people who like the arts who study piano, and they go to school to study piano, and they spend their day playing the piano. They may go away to study, and then when they return home after their study, they don't want to lose their skill at the piano. So they have other things that they might have to do, but they spend at least an hour a day playing the piano so that they will still be able to play, that they won't lose the skill that they've gained when they were studying at school. So then one will be able to play well. Sayadaw says he would like to suggest that the yogis practice at home an hour a day at least, and to keep up the skill and to develop it further. You have to practice with the effort to make your mind connect with the object accurately. And if you do this 1 hour a day, in time your skill will grow. When one returns to one's home and continuing one's practice, while here one has developed Vipassana knowledge to some extent, and when one continues to practice, continues to apply oneself, that Vipassana knowledge can continue to develop. When it becomes mature, one will go from observing the continual stream of mental and physical phenomena that we call our life to observing that which is unconditioned, that which does not arise and pass away. This can happen at any time. So if one has gained Sotapati path and fruition, this first realization of Nibbana, then one has gained a guarantee that one will not have bad lifetimes in the future. One will have good existences, and this is very good. So Sayadaw would like to speak about the virtues of realizing Sotapadhi path and fruition. Now, due to our practice, because of seeing that there are mental and physical phenomena, one has become free of the view that there's a self inside us, that there's a person. But the roots have not yet been pulled out. That belief has not yet been completely uprooted. But realization of the first path uproots this belief completely so that it never returns. In the early stage of the practice, one comes to know that nama and rupa, mental and physical phenomena, are related by cause and effect. If one has seen that relevant causes lead to relevant effect, that the causes and the results match each other, then one is free of doubt. But at the stage of realizing first path, Sotapadhi path and fruition, one is completely free of doubt. One knows for sure that mental and physical phenomena do not arise without a cause, and that each one has their own cause. So any doubt about this will be completely uprooted by the realization of Sotapadhi path. And at that time, one will no longer have any belief that a creator is causing what we experience. Benefits of the practice of Satipatthana. Through and understanding the practice, through faith in the benefits, faith in the practice, one has applied it, and one has gained benefits such as purity of mind, and so on. When one gains the knowledge of path and fruition, one has completely certain faith in the practice, and one will never give it up. One knows for sure that this practice leads to the benefits that it said. One follows this path of Satipatthana. The Buddha declared boldly that one will gain purity of mind as well as 6 other benefits. So this is what the Buddha gave us as the answer, the result of the practice. The Buddha told us this much about where the practice leads. But it's like when we work the math problem. We don't get the answer in advance. As long as we apply the method for solving the problem, we will get the appropriate result. So there's 2 aspects to the work that we do. One is applying the method, and the second is the answer that develops through using the method. And of these 2, it's the method of practice that is the most important. Sayadaw says, don't pay attention to the answer. Just keep on working out the problem. Every step of the way, you will get further and further towards the answer. And in time, the answer will reveal itself. So Sayadaw says, don't have any interest in the results of the practice. Just based on strong faith, continue your practice in a regular way. If one develops the practice to completion and gains Sotapadhi path, if one gains the first realization of Nibbana, one will no longer think of nama and rupa as self. There will be no belief in a self. And one also will not have any belief in a creator. And one won't go to other practices. One understands that this is the way to develop knowledge, so one won't turn away from this practice and go to other practices. These tendencies are all dispelled completely. And lobha, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion, are eliminated to some extent. The gross level of lobha and dosa that can pull us down to existences in the lower realms, that level of greed and anger is eliminated. But there is still medium grade and refined grade of greed, hatred, and delusion that remains to be eliminated. Sayadaw said that at the point now, at the time when one realizes Sotapatti path and fruition, one becomes free of the gross level of lobha, dosa, and moha, the transgressive level of kilesas. But there's also further virtues that are described in the text, further virtues that come from realizing Sotapatti path. And these 8 Sayadaw will now speak about. If Sotapatti path actually arises, it eliminates transgressive, gross level, lobha, dosa, and moha permanently. And earlier on, one eliminated the belief in a self and in a creator, but these are also permanently eliminated at this stage. If one is not yet a Sotapanna, whether one is a monk or a nun or a yogi, one has not dispelled the gross level of greed, hatred, and delusion. If one has become a Sotapanna, then one has. And this is not the only benefit. This piercing and destruction to some extent of the mass of kilesas, this happens at Sotapatti path, but that's not the only thing. However, putting out the fires in oneself is what it's very important to do, to pierce this mass of the kilesas. And thus this practice is very appropriate for the yogis. If one becomes a Sotapanna, then one is free of 4 kinds of low rebirth, and one has at most 7 future existences in the good realms as a human being or as a deva. However, life occurs to the extent that there is kilesas for in particular ignorance and craving. Ignorance, craving, and clinging. As long as these are there, one will endure future existences. And this continual existence, one after another, is called samsara. Samsara is so long that one can't see where it started. It's been going on for so long. But when one realizes Sotapatti path, because the kilesas have been eliminated to some extent, one's future existences become limited to, just as described, only 4 free of lower rebirths and at most 7 more existences in good realms. So it's said that this Sotapatti path dries up the ocean of samsara. Due to bad actions that we've done in past lifetimes, or even in this lifetime, then there's the potential for one to be reborn in lower realms of existence. But with the realization of Sotapatti path, there's no longer this potential. So it's said that Sotapatti path closes the door to the apaya realms, the lower realms, because greed and hatred, delusion, can no longer occur on a gross level. So there won't be anything to pull us down to the lower realms. And even what we did in the past will no longer take us to. If in fact one gains Sotapatti path, the one who gains this knowledge becomes like a rich person. They gain a type of wealth that can never be used up. Worldly possessions can be used up. We can run out of them. But the possessions that a person gains through realizing Sotapatti path will never be used up. And these are, first of all, faith. One gains the wealth of faith. Faith and confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, in the path of practice, the teachings. And sila, the wealth of sila, one won't transgress, one won't break the 5 precepts at this point. And one gains the wealth of hiri and ottappa. Hiri, the shame regarding potential akusala. One is ashamed to do a wrong deed. And one has fear, healthy fear of doing wrong. These are like wealth. And then also one gains the wealth of learning. This one gains through listening to the Dhamma talks, and one also through one's practice and through one's reading. One becomes knowledgeable with the gaining of Sotapatti path. And one also gains the wealth of chaga. This means 2 things. It means that one abandons kilesas, and one also is generous about giving away things, about performing deeds of generosity. So one has the wealth of being able to give up. And the last type of wealth is the wealth of wisdom, panya, which includes, of course, the experience that one gains in the practice. When one gains such knowledge, then when one goes about work for oneself and others, one will be able to weigh whether something is beneficial or not, and whether something is suitable or not. So this is a very, very good thing. So when one has that ability, that type of knowledge, then in going about what one does, there will be almost no mistakes in what one does. So this is another benefit of gaining Sotapatti path and fruition, that one gains these 7 types of wealth. So one who wants to have long-lasting possessions should follow this path, and bit by bit one will gain these possessions which never leave one. Realizes Sotapatti path, one will abandon the wrong path. One will no longer follow the path that is not correct. So what are the parts of this path? Well, for example, there's mechavasa. Mechavasa is wrong speech, lying, quarreling, causing quarrels, idle talk, deceit, slander. All these things are harsh speech. All these things are mechavasa, wrong speech. So one will no longer do that. And One also won't perform wrong actions, mecha kamanta. Wrong actions are things like stealing, killing, committing adultery, rape, incest, and so on. With regard to sense pleasures, with regard to these misdeeds involving sex, when one commits such acts, the result that one gets from them is that one will no longer be reborn as a male. One will be reborn in female form or possibly other types of existences. So, maybe they won't. And, for example, one might have a tendency to be gay, or one may be hermaphrodite, and so on. So, with the practice of, when gaining Sotapaddi path in fruition, one will have sila. One will only commit wholesome verbal and physical acts. So one won't follow the path of wrong actions. And one also won't follow wrong methods. One won't have wrong effort, wrong samadhi, wrong mindfulness. That is basically the samadhi path directed in a wrong way. And one will not have wrong, what is called mechapanya, or one won't have wrong view. So, with the realization of Sotapaddi path, one abandons the eightfold wrong path, and one will only follow the eightfold right path. Sixth quality of Sotapaddi path is that it subdues all enemies and dangers. So, the internal enemies, for example, because the internal enemies are quelled, one has nothing to fear. The internal enemies are things like selfishness, which when it is extreme, it leads us to commit acts such as stealing, or adultery, rape, incest, and so on. And one who is driven by selfishness has no concern for other people's welfare, no compassion when seeing others suffer, and no feeling of joy when another is well off. And thus in one's mind, hatred and envy become extreme too. So one has extreme anger. Due to that, one harms others and kills. And one also resorts to deceit, lying, based on one's kilesas. So when one doesn't have any type of sympathy for others, or any joy when another has something good, such a person will be overwhelmed by anger and envy and malice. So one, without any true understanding of karma as our own property, then one won't understand that we should avoid recreational drugs and alcohol. In using these, under their influence, people commit wrong. So as one commits misdeeds based on one's extreme kilesas, then one will certainly suffer the consequences. People will become one's enemy. So due to misdeeds, first of all, one will come to blame oneself for having done wrong. And further, others will blame one. And in addition, on a worldly level, when we transgress the law, we'll suffer legal punishment. And further, the bad intention involved in carrying out gross misdeeds will lead us to a lower life in future. If we look at the world and see the suffering that is caused due to not keeping the 5 precepts, we see also that when one keeps the 5 precepts, as a Sotapanna does, it's a significant contribution to world peace. This practice of Satipatthana is the best method for bringing about world peace. Although people call for peace in the world, unless it's brought about by developing internal peace, first of all, on an individual level, it will be ineffective. So the best way to work for peace is to gain peace within ourselves and then try to help the world. So due to eliminating the enemies within us, one subdues the dangers that can come from the outside. So if one wants to be free of danger, one should practice in order to be a Sotapanna. Then one will be free. And the seventh benefit that Sotapatti path and fruition bring is that one becomes a true child, a true son or daughter of the Buddha who knew the Dhamma and taught it. Until one reaches this first stage of enlightenment, one is not a true son or daughter of the Buddha, and there's still the potential that one might go to another religion if one doesn't practice. So many people who don't practice the Dhamma end up converting to other religions. But if one practices to the extent of realizing Sotapatti path, one feels as though one is a son or daughter of the Buddha. This is something that we gain through realizing Sotapatti path. And the last benefit that is listed in the text, it just says that there are many, many other benefits that arise when one becomes a Sotapanna. So Sayadaw doesn't have time to elaborate, to go into detail about this last point. But there are many, and first, for example, when one listens to the Dhamma, if one is a Sotapanna, when one listens to the Dhamma, one can tell if what is being said is true or not. And when one hears the Dhamma being explained, when it matches what one has experienced, then one feels happy. So these are some of the benefits that one gets from realizing Sotapattihood. And Sayadaw hopes and wishes that all of you who may be able to reach this Sotapatti path and fruition, which gives you these benefits. Now that you've come here, you've learned the practice, the method of practice. Sayadaw hopes that you all will continue to practice and to work until you gain the full value of having been born a human, to work until you gain the first level of enlightenment so that your future will be assured and you will gain the benefit of this life. So Sayadaw is discussing these virtues of realizing path and fruition so that with the hope that the yogis will be able to work to realize this knowledge. That's all for today. Sayadaw wants to make two statements at this point regarding yogis who have come here but not applied the practice full time, or who have applied other methods. These yogis will not be accepted in future. If one is going to come here and practice, one must do the method that we teach here. One must not do another method. Yogis who have done this during the retreat are not welcome to come back. And yogis who do not practice full time are also not welcome. So this is something that Sayadaw also wants to say. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. To is to close the ceremony by reciting a gatha that begins Sasana Sacha Loka Sa. And perhaps everybody could repeat after me if I say it line by line. Sasana Sacha Lokasa Voti Bhavatu Sabada Sasanam picha lokancha Deva rakantu sabada Sasana sacha lokasa Roti bhavatu sabada Sasanam picha lokancha Deva rakantu sabada May there always be progress. May there always be progress. Always be progress for the sasana and the world. May the good devas and brahmas always protect the teachings and the world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Imaya Dhamma Buddham Pujami Imaya Dhamma Pujami Imaya Sangham Pujami Atta Imaya Patipadaya Saravanama Parimochisami Idam no punyam Asvakayavaham Hotu Idam no punyam Nirvanasa Pachayo Hotu Imano Punyabhagam Sarvasatanam Virajima Sati Sata Imam Punyabhagam Latipra Sukhita Bhavantu Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu Sadhu, sadhu Sadhu, sadhu